Dontae Carter is carving out quite the role for himself with this latest performance in the spring scrimmage.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. And today we look at how Dontae Carter might be taking over the free safety position. He's becoming the playmaker that he was expected to be when he signed. And his latest scrimmage performance just proves that fact. Next, there's plenty of concern mounting at the wide receiver position. Injuries and guys just not really performing is making it a guessing game as to who's going to be playing out there. So we'll break down at who that could be. It's Junior Sherrill, and we'll fill in those names. Lastly, we wrap up the show by discussing how Vandy's offense has let them down in a very important series versus Arkansas. What do they do? Are they really a team that can overcome extremely poor hitting, even though their pitching is really good? It's just not a promising situation. But anyway, what is promising is the fact that you guys are listening and making Locked On Vandy your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So, Dontae Carter, okay, the safety position coming in, I think was a bit of a mystery because, yeah, there's some guys there that have a lot of talent, and Vandy did well in the transfer portal, but we just you just don't know who's going to perform there. Like Marlon Sewell, he's okay. You lose CJ Taylor, you lose DeRicky Wright. Things are a little bit concerning there. Like who's going to step in? Athletically, it's as good a position as any. I mean, you have Randon Fontenette, you have Dontae Carter, you have Florida Atlantic transfer CJ Hurd, you have Marlon Sewell, you have redshirt freshman Jalen Gilbert in there as well. Like you have some options. And then Carson Lawrence comes in as an early enrollee freshman, and he's been kind of the talk of camp. So out of all these guys, you get a guy out of the portal in CJ Hurd, you get Carson Lawrence, standout early enrollee, and Dontae Carter just kind of gets lost in the shuffle. And to me, and the things that I had kind of heard about, I was reading about, and just kind of knowing what I know about Dontae Carter is he played in every game, all 13 games for Vandy. Didn't make too much of an impact, and I think a lot of that was because he was a true freshman. He just didn't have the size. He just wasn't quite ingrained and integrated into the defense, I should say. And it just, for whatever reason, just didn't work out for him as well as he had hoped. And for him to get more playing time and for him to be the guy, that had to change. And Vandy still went out and got some guys out of the portal. They still went out and brought some bodies in. And there was a thought that they still needed to do some work there. But to me now, Dontae Carter's proving that they may not need to do that unless they just go get kind of a down the line guy, or one of these freshmen comes in that's not an early enrollee, but there's some guys coming in, Van Zel Hinton and some other guys in this freshman class that are coming in that are going to provide some of the depth that they need and kind of develop back there. But, as a position as a whole, I think athletically, this position is getting better. And Dontae Carter's proving that. Dontae Carter is becoming the athlete everybody expected him to be when he signed, and everybody expected to be when they heard all these reports and when they saw him in last year's spring period. He came on quick. He got integrated into the scheme quickly. He made some noise, and it was once thought that he may take over a starting spot and bump DeRicky Wright down, or there was going to be some sort of scenario where he was getting significant playing time, if not starting. And that obviously didn't materialize, but part of it was, he had to put on weight. He had to, get more comfortable with the scheme, and he had to get stronger. He had to get faster, and all those things, and he did. And you're starting to see it now. And you didn't really hear much about what he was doing. I think a lot of the attention was on Carson Lawrence, and Carson Lawrence was making some great plays. So, I mean, he deserved it. But, Clark Lee said, the physical play is kind of what stood out to him. And that's good in this league. Like, that's what you need. It's a guy that, is starting to get the weight to be able to throw around. He's 185, which is not phenomenal for an SEC defensive back, but or especially one that's going to have to play in the run game some. But it's improving, and all his other skills are to the point where he can be a little bit lighter because he's throwing himself around. He's a ball hawk. He's versatile. He's going to come down and fit the run. He's going to come down and do the right things and say the right things and get people in the right spots. And all of those qualities as a free safety is really kind of what you look forward to. And so, the versatility of being able to play in the box, I think, just added to his ability to get in there and really just kind of make some noise as a potential starter. Like, he is sitting in the driver's seat right now. CJ Hurd still has a little ways to go as far as learning the scheme and learning the defense. Dontae Carter has a leg up, and he's taking advantage of that. Marlon Sewell probably knows the defense just as good as Carter, but he's just not – they're not the same player. He's not quite as good as Dontae Carter. Dontae Carter just needed to get the physical part down so that he could actually be a factor in this defense. And I was a little worried that he probably wasn't going to be the case, because he's just skinny, or he was just skinny. He wasn't building a ton of muscle. He hadn't looked a whole lot different from last year coming into this year. And you weren't really sure, because they're not going to tell you. You can't really glean a whole lot from workouts and OTAs and bat drills or whatever you want to call them, based on speed, except for just like the 40 times and stuff like that, which they're not going to share those results. But we weren't ever going to see this until he got on the field, how he can respond, how he could use what he learned scheme wise as a defensive signal caller, as a defensive leader on the back end. You weren't going to see how well his physicality and his weight gain and his, you weren't really going to see how much faster he got or any sort of improvements in the weight room until you got onto the field, which I think when you're trying to evaluate that position, I think it's good to see that. I think it's good to be able to understand, all right, well, he's got to do X, Y, Z. And I think safety from a depth perspective, I think it is now not a big concern. I think they want to get their depth right at every position. So there might be some shuffling, like offensive line might have a little bit of shuffling because, one guy here, you just need to kind of shuffle some pieces around. Wide receiver needs to kind of figure it out. I think somebody from that group is going to I think a couple of guys are going to get cut, and they're just going to refill them with other guys from the portal. I hate to say that, but we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But it's just good to see that Dontae Carter is not only proving that you don't really need to go out and get a bunch of safeties. He's proving that he's going to be the guy back there. He is going to be the ace in the hole. He's going to be the guy. His versatility is going to back that up. His run prevention ability, and as he gets better at that, and as he continues to add lean weight and muscle mass and get stronger and get faster, those things will help him be able to back up the fact that, hey, he can play in the box, he can play at free safety, he can play a deep high safety, center field, and cover one. He might be able, and he's got to show now that he can cover in the slot as well. But he's going to keep improving the little things and just really just kind of build a role. And one of the things you hoped for with him sitting behind DeRicky Wright and getting playing time, but probably not as much as he would have liked to, because he's probably somebody being a 4-star recruit out of San Antonio, Texas, he's probably not used to playing in a reserve role. He had to kind of adjust to that. And I think that was probably hard on him too. But learning from Dericky Wright was an important thing. Learning how to communicate, like that's the biggest thing as a safety, is the communication and taking charge, because you are the guy back there. And Dericky Wright was a great communicator. CJ Taylor was a great communicator. But I think where Vandy's going to improve at the safety position is the fact that CJ Taylor and Dericky Wright are slightly different players than what they have coming in. I think this is a more athletic bunch than those two. Those two were great players. They were really physical. They were Johnny on the spot. But I think as deep safeties, I'm not sure that they were exactly what Vandy needed. They were very run oriented, very linebacker mentality where they're coming down, and that got them in trouble on a few occasions. So it's a different style, not that one's better or versus another. It might just be a preference thing with Clark Lee's scheme that, a guy like Dontae Carter will probably end up saying that he's a better fit for this scheme versus like and Dericky Wright was a better fit down low, and just different roles maybe, and we're going to kind of see that unfold. But Dontae Carter's been absolutely outstanding. He had a pick in the scrimmage, has been excelling all spring, been kind of carving out that role for himself. So I'm excited to kind of see this position develop over the course of spring and fall camp and into the season, because I think when it came into spring as a position of not extreme concern, but like we're kind of concerned about this position, to now it's, hey, this position is going to be really good for this team. And a lot of that is on the shoulders of Dontae Carter. But going from a position that's not of terribly high importance to are we ready to hit the panic button on this position? And that's the wide receivers. And we'll talk about who's next after Junior Sherrill. So it's Junior Sherrill and we'll talk about that next. Hey, but first we're going to talk about Monarch Money, because have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and playing your NCAA tournament brackets and playing those bets on FanDuel, it's probably easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, giving your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, just so you just stop managing your money and start building wealth, right? It's not about rich. We're talking about wealth. All right. Surprising insights, man. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery, man. It's ridiculous. Now I'll budget smarter and save more. And instead of juggling multiple apps, I can use Monarch, and so can you, to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is also smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without all the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. All right. Imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd, and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person. That's right. Getting tickets shouldn't be stressful, but that's where Game Time comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices. Game Time Picks curation makes it easier to find better value for tickets to sports, comedy, theater, or whatever you want to do. So it makes it easier. That's the key word, easy. If it's easy, you can do it, and Game Time does that. So I just checked the Game Time app. There are amazing deals on some huge matchups coming up and some great shows as well. The lowest price guarantee, they have the lowest price guarantee, and Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find that better deal. So do you like peace of mind? I do. With seat views before you buy, no surprise fees, and a lowest price guarantee, you can book with total confidence. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, we are back. It's Locked On Vandy. Thanks for making us your first listen. If you need a second listen, Locked On SEC might be the place for you. Or Locked On Ole Miss with Stephen Willis. He has great insight, great perspectives on Ole Miss athletics. He's really super stoked about the season that Ole Miss basketball had, even though it ended not so great fashion against Michigan State. But still, nonetheless, Ole Miss is not used to that kind of thing. But I'm not here to talk about Ole Miss. Here to talk about Vandy. And a position of concern for Vandy is the wide receiver position. That's probably the biggest. Like, when you get an email and it's like got that red exclamation point, it's really big, really loud, and you're just like, oh, high priority. And it's, a lot of times it's your boss just sending something that he wants you to read, and it's not really all that important, but your boss thinks it's important. This is definitely one of those emails, but except it's important. Because when you're looking at this wide receiver position, and you're reading the reports, and you're looking for the guys that are producing, and you're not really seeing it. You're seeing some guys that are banged up or non-existent, and I just don't know where these guys are. And if they're listening to this and they get upset, show me. Like Jeremiah Dillon, for one. Coming in with so much promise, coming from a Lane Kiffin offense, Ole Miss, fast, smooth, just once thought there wasn't an opportunity for him. It was a crowded room. They had kind of recruited over him. Well, I guess we're starting to see why. He's very inconsistent, very hit or miss. A lot of talent. Not sure that he's capitalizing on it. Not sure what's going on there. Chance Fitzgerald, I think he's going to be good. But if he's just good, is that really SEC quality? Is that really starter quality? Probably not, which is fine. But if you have a bunch of, it's fine, then you're going to be in trouble at that position. Junior Sherrill has been good. He's been really good. He's showing that he can be a little bit consistent, and he's showing that he can be that top guy, and he can get some chunk plays. And a lot of it is because I think he has a good rapport with Diego Pavia. I think a lot of it is he's showing out. And some of this could be the fact that they're trying to go through different quarterbacks and the timing's off. And I get that. I totally get that. I think that could be a big factor even. But at some point it should normalize, and it just hasn't. So this leads me to believe that either some things are true. Okay. Like if you're relying on Martell Height to be your guy, he's a corner. And that's going to moonlight at wide receiver because there is nobody else. Like, he's not coming over and playing 60 plays a game at wide receiver. He's just not. That's not going to happen. I'd be surprised. Could happen, but I'd be surprised if it did, right? Because he's got to play corner. He's got to be the return guy on punts and kickoffs. So, like, where's this guy going to rest? So you can't count on that. Joseph McVay, I said I think he was going to be the dude, and I still believe that. He's just banged up right now, and he's just not had a chance to build any sort of rapport, timing, development or whatever. He's just banged up. So, and some of it's precautionary, and they don't want to rush him back because they don't have to. But, I still think that, my prediction of Joseph McVay being one of the guys starting on the outside, he's still the guy to me. I think he's still, he's explosive. He can take the top off the defense. Not all that consistent, but I think the vertical threat he provides, I think, gives you enough spark to say, okay, you get this run, right? So to me, that's one of the guys, and I think he's going to be a reliable target. I really do. I think he showed a little bit of that last year. I just think as a freshman, he was trying to get integrated into the scheme. He was trying to get adjusted to college life. And there was a lot of things that freshmen deal with that he was probably dealing with, if I had to guess, not being there, not being around him. I was guessing that he's having to deal with that. But he showed flashes of what he could do. And now he's not a freshman. Kind of like Dontae Carter, like talented, played a decent amount, had modest production, but lots of potential. And I think Joseph McVay has all of that Dontae Carter has, just, not able to show it. I think he will eventually. But to me, the other key contributors are not, they're not on campus right now. Trent Hudson, I think, because of the relationship and the rapport he had with Diego Pavia at New Mexico State and with Blaise Berlowitz, for that matter, and the familiarity he has with the scheme coming in, that's going to give him an advantage. I think LeBron Hill is somebody that I watched him on film. He's somebody that honestly, and this doesn't speak well to the rest of the group. And, I'm sorry to have to say this, but like the fact that LeBron Hill is going to come in and could waltz in and jump into a starting role, that's not good for the rest of the guys. So what's going to happen at this position? My prediction is there's going to be a couple of guys that are cut. Like you're going to see, because they have to get to 105, and they're going to have to cut some of those guys. And they're going to have to cut some others. They're going to rearrange some stuff. And I think they're going to come back through the portal and get like a playmaker. Get somebody that can come in and just has a ton of ability because they just need something. And so I made the bold prediction that the receivers are going to be productive. I still think so. I don't know where it's going to come from, who it's going to come from, but I think as a position as a whole, they're going to be productive. And some of that is baptism by fire. They're, competing against the corners and all that stuff. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes, and we'll see kind of how they progress throughout the rest of the spring. A little disappointing in the first scrimmage, but, I think Joseph McVay is going to be the guy. Junior Sherrill's going to be the guy. Martell Height's going to be the moonlighter. Bosky Barrett's going to have to step up, and one other guy. You're going to have to get some production. You don't need a ton. You got Bryson Coleman, who's lighting the freaking world on fire. He had a 75-yard run for a touchdown. He caught a short pass and took it the rest of the distance for a 75-yard touchdown. So that's a tight end. So you're going to have some 12 personnel. So you're not going to have as many wide receivers on the field because you have Eli Stowers. He runs like a wideout. And you have Bryson Coleman, who can't be covered for some reason. Maybe your production comes from there. Maybe you don't need a ton of receivers. Maybe you go elsewhere. I don't know. Your backs are going to be in the passing game too. So, the receivers, maybe they might get off the hook here and not have to produce. Who knows? But speaking of not producing on offense, the Vandy boys, baseball, they they just got swept against Arkansas. It was bad. Lack of power plagues them. We'll see. We'll talk about that and what that looks like next. Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for skilled trades. Supply House. Whether you're into plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus brands, you'll find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, they're free. That's right. You heard me right. Free. Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. So join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, welcome back. Wrapping up the show here, Locked On Vandy. Thanks for making us your first listen. At Locked On Vandy on all social media platforms. If you want to follow, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. So, baseball is in a little bit of a struggle bus. You drop a series against Auburn, sweep A&M, and then get swept against Arkansas. So through 9 conference games, you've won 4. You lost 5. And the 5 that you lost are not good because guess what's not happening? Offense. All right. So here's some numbers. Offense has really let Vandy down. They rank last in the SEC in homers. They're probably leaving a ton of guys on base, when they are hitting, and they're just not hitting even then. They're scoring just 4.33 runs per SEC game through 9 games, and has scored 4 runs or less in 5 of its conference games. Guess what? Those are probably all losses. So this is a concern of mine because if you're going to play high-level baseball, at some point, your pitching needs to be really good. And I've always said pitching wins in the postseason. So if they can continue to pitch well, the offense needs to catch up because if they can't score runs, you're just in the ping era. You're not gonna win a whole lot of games, right? In SEC games, RJ Austin he's been brilliant in other games. In SEC games, he's hitting 176. Colin Barzey is hitting 179. Vastine hitting 200. Brody Johnston is he's come back down to earth a little bit as well. And they're not hitting the ball out of the yard. They're just not driving the ball. And Omaha, it's going to take a little bit of that. Now, you don't have to be like gorilla ball like LSU to be able to be successful because if you can pitch a little bit, you don't have to crush the ball, but you can't finish last in the SEC in home runs either. They were 15th in total hits. This is all SEC ranks. 14th in doubles, 12th in total runs. Not good, right? It's upper middle pack in strikeouts and stolen bases. It's near the bottom virtually every other category in the conference. They've had and they have an improved lineup, which if they had last year's lineup, they'd be probably dead last in every single category. But, I think they have a small ball approach, and it just hasn't worked. And I think we're going to see just how bad A&M was, which is concerning for this team. I think this team's in a lot better place than it was a year ago. I think the pitching is in a lot better place, and I think the pitching will rescue this team while they try to figure some things out. But what it's going to boil down to is the fact that this team is going to be constructed like the basketball team, like with Mark Byington's team. They're going to be really good in a lot of stuff. But like the thing that matters the most in postseason play in basketball is size in the paint. Guess what killed them? Size in the paint, right? It killed them at every single one of their losses, size in the paint, right? Same with baseball. You have great pitching, which is like having great point guards. But if you can't hit home runs, if you can't score, you can't hit extra base hits, and you can't drive the baseball on a consistent basis, you're not going to win a ton of games. But every once in a while you're going to win one with a performance from like Connor Fennell and Cody Bowker, having those ace-like performances. So, the pitching has been outstanding, especially you have 2 aces now. Cody Bowker is the ace of spades, and Connor Fennell is the ace of diamonds. And the ace of spades, if you're familiar with the game spades, it's the trump card. So, ace of spades is the ultimate ace. So you have some great pitching And you have to take advantage of that by giving them run support. Because if you can't give them run support, it's just not going to last. And same with basketball. They're small paint players. They're small forwards where it just didn't last. They got out rebounded by St. Mary's. Vandy's going to get out hit. And if Vandy somehow can weasel their way into a super regional, they're just going to get hit out of the yard if they don't figure this stuff out. And that's the concerning part. They have to figure it out, whether they try to manufacture something now and try to really dive into their identity, which Mark Byington did with the basketball team, or they can just have to ride this out, go in the portal and get some true power. Like Tim Corbin's going to have to realize he's going to have to do something that he doesn't want to do. And that's hit the portal and get some power in your lineup, which I thought we had with Braden Holcomb. I thought we had with Brody Johnston, but they've been on a slump. So maybe if they can get going, maybe it was a bad series. We'll see. But the lack of offense, the lack of the lack of stats, and the fact that they're in the bottom, of the SEC and just about every offensive category is concerning nonetheless. But the pitching is great. If it's good news, bad news, like the pitching is phenomenal. Pitching is way better. The pitching is as good as it's been. It's as good as it's ever been. But they're at an Omaha level of pitching. We're lucky to make a regional level of hitting right now. That's got to change. So, but what's not going to change is the fact that I'm going to be with you every single day. We're going to start this month of April off with a bang as we move towards spring practice, as we get into the meat of the SEC schedule and figuring out what to do in the portal on basketball. MJ Collins enter the portal. It just seems like the priority now is just to get a roster. A lot of people are in the portal in basketball. That's just the nature of the beast, I guess. So we'll talk more about that as portal guys and portal things heat up in basketball. We'll talk about football, obviously, and we'll see you back here next time. Locked On Vandy on the Locked On Podcast Network. Anchor down. Peace out. Behave yourselves.